Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. What's going on?
Got you.
How you going?
Good. I think that area I was in was a bad area. I think because yeah, I couldn't connect. I could see you, but you couldn't see me.
Oh, I didn't know. Awesome. Anyway, thank you so much for doing this. This is really great.
Oh, no problem. No problem whatsoever. So I'm in the lounge now, so it might be a bit more noisy, but I'll try.
That's fine. We can see and hear you great. So you said you've been able to play a little bit of tennis. How's everything going over there?
Well, we've been lucky. I shouldn't probably get in trouble for saying this, but we managed to find a private court where it's actually a house that's up for sale, and so no one's been there for 4 months. So it's literally a vacant court, and there's no one there. So we just drive around there and bring the balls and bring the water and go out there. It's 85, 90 degrees and hot, but we get a 2-hour workout in.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've had lots of rain here in San Diego, but it's good to hear that you've got some good weather and getting on the court. My first question for you was transitioning from player to coach. You had an awesome playing career. Did you find any difficulties transitioning from a player to a coach?
Well, I sort of got lucky because even though, when I sort of retired, I went straight into, doing coaching, and also I played sort of team tennis and played on the senior tour pretty quick. So I sort of I did a bit of coaching and playing at the same time. So I didn't just go into one thing, but I actually felt that it helped me being a coach and trying to get into it. I think it helped actually my game, funnily enough, and I think technically I became a better player after I stopped than when I was actually playing. Unfortunately, my legs weren't as good and I couldn't move as well. But actually, in terms of technique, I learned things from working with other players and seeing. You've got to remember, in my day, most people grew up with continental grips.
Yep.
It's 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams were on grass, and so we all played on fast surfaces and kind of short backswings and with the Conti grip, and then obviously in transitioning into the modern game, I didn't try and change it because I moved my grip slightly, but working with players that obviously had Western grips and completely different from me was a change, but you just adapt. That's what you do.
Yeah, I mean it's a big change. You've seen a lot of changes over the years.
No
equipment
kidding.
changes. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed some huge changes.
Well, it just, I look back at things, and we're just talking about that here, actually playing tennis, because you suddenly, you start playing and you're hitting 2 hours every day, and all of a sudden your rackets start to break, and you're thinking, crikey, I can't get my racket strung like I used to, for the last few years of the tour, because it's not so easy now because everyone's obviously indoors and you can't find someone to string your rackets. But I look back at when I played in the old days and used to have, 4 rackets on court, 4 wood rackets. And there were no restringers sort of hanging around the courts like there are now. And so you would get your favorite racket, which you liked, and then you would not hit with it and just use it. You would pray that you didn't break it during the match. You only had 3 other ones left. And in those days with gut strings, rackets could go quick.
Yeah, they could just pop off at any moment, huh?
Pop off at any moment. So, so now I see players every, 7 or 8 games, and they change rackets and brand new. I'm thinking, that's a slight change, just a slight change.
That's a luxury. So you're a Wimbledon member, and not a lot of people know how you become a Wimbledon member and what are the benefits. It's a pretty special honour. Yeah,
well, you can only become a member. There's 2 ways. There's the easy way, which is by winning the singles at Wimbledon. I say that in a sarcastic way, but actually, that in some ways that's easier actually, because becoming a member the other way is very difficult. It certainly has got better, but in my day it was very difficult. It was sort of very much kind of old school, and you had to get 6 members write in letters for you, and then they sort of basically vetted you and decided whether or not you were worth becoming what they call a temporary member, which was where you could use the facilities to a certain extent, but then if you did something they didn't like, they'd kick you off. And it was really sort of the old school tie stuff in my day, and to get in to become a Wimbledon member was very difficult. The benefits of it obviously are, to be honest, is that you get access to Wimbledon tickets, which you buy, which are obviously gold. The club is an amazing club, and I have to say, it has improved. In my day, when we played the tournament, Wimbledon was You know, it was really a stiff sort of upper lip kind of club, and you got the feeling that the members there really sort of wanted you out of the place as soon as you lost, because you were sort of you were interfering in their club, and they wanted you around just for the 2 weeks of Wimbledon, but then get the heck off the courts as soon as possible, because they didn't want you to be around. It wasn't a great club in those days, to be honest. It was. You know, it was tough to become a member. The vetting process wasn't great, and I didn't used to spend much time there, to tell the truth, because I didn't like a lot of the members. But it has improved a lot now. It's got younger. But to go into your story, the only way that in your question, each year they only have a certain amount of members. I can't remember the exact figure. And then basically, if a member passes away, then there becomes a vacancy. So you know, a lot of people, you know, sort of gathering around and waiting for spots. You know,
definitely.
Terrible, but that's the only way you get in. And then and then if you say something wrong, then you know, before you're a temporary member, you can get kicked out of the club. So you've got to be careful.
And it's just something that it's always amazed me. You know, Wimbledon. If you make the final, you're not going to be a Wimbledon member. You got to win it.
You've got to win the singles as well. It doesn't matter if you win the doubles or mix. It's got to be the singles. So that's the only thing that counts. But they're honorary members. They're not allowed to vote. But they get all the benefits. But they can't vote in you know, in elections and all that stuff in the club. But I mean, who cares about that anyway?
Yeah. My next question: dealing with pressure and expectation. You've had to deal with a lot of pressure in your career, being the UK's best player. How have you helped your players to deal with pressure and expectation?
Well, you know, that's a good question. To be honest, I didn't deal with the pressure well at Wimbledon in the singles. You know, I won a couple of mixed doubles there, but singles, I underachieved at Wimbledon. It's something I always regret. I found it very difficult to sort of, you know, the expectation was so strong when I was number one or number two that, you know, to do well in the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. I felt I relaxed and played a lot better at the US Open and the Australian, where I was just another player. So I didn't do it very well. So my admiration for people like, you know, Tim Henman and Andy Murray, and that seem to actually enjoy that pressure. I have a lot of admiration, because I found it very sort of stifling. But you know, I tell players now. I mean, you know, I always think that Billie Jean King has that great line that, you know, pressure is a privilege, and I think it's one of the best tennis lines that there ever has been said by anybody. And she's absolutely right. And when you get in pressure situations and you know, world team tennis, that, you know, obviously, you know, that I'm the coach of the Aviators, as you know, there's pressure points. Well, every point is pressure point there, because they're gold. And you basically, you know, what I tell players is that this is what you play tennis for. I mean, this is what you train hours and hours a day for, to get the chance to embrace it. And sometimes I didn't in my career, or many times I didn't. Sometimes I did. But the great champions are the ones that embrace it every day. They almost want it. They want pressure situations, because that's when they feel that the best are going to get, you know, that they're going to come through, because, you know, they've earned it and they want it. And that's why champions are champions.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. How, going along with world team tennis, and it's such a fast and furious pace of play, how do you prepare the players that come into the team to get ready for that pace of play?
Well, it's difficult. There's no question about it, because in normal tennis, you know, you do have a bit more breathing space. You know, you have time to come back. You know, if things don't go well in team tennis, being the sets of 1st to 5, whether it be singles, doubles, or mixed, every point is gold. And so, you know, when we talk about it, you know, obviously, if you get players in the team that have played it before, that's in some ways an advantage, because newcomers, sometimes they don't get it. They don't get that first point to go down love 15, then love 30 is huge, because you may not come back again, especially 1st to 5, especially more in the men's than the women's. And I don't mean that in any bad way, but the men's serve, you lose an early break in team tennis in men's, you know, you're in big trouble. In the women's, you have maybe a slight better chance of coming back. But it's all about embracing the pressure, and that every point is gold. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that the players that play team tennis, you know, after the season, when they come out of it, they actually play better on the regular tour, because they get used to that pressure situation on every point. There's no cheap point. Every point is vital.
Yeah, everything's under the microscope. What does the average sort of practice session for the Aviators look like?
Well, a lot depends on if we have days off, and we don't have that many days off.
Yep.
This team tennis season is pretty quick, and it goes pretty quick. But you know, if it was a match day, for instance, you know, we would play for about an hour, you know, during the early part of the day, sort of around, well, early 10 or 11, something like that, and all four players would come out, and you know, we'd be, depending who the players are, some like extra, some like drills, and some will stay afterwards. But generally speaking, it'd be about an hour and a half, and then they come. Then they go off, and then they'll come back again about an hour before the match and play for another 20 minutes, 30 minutes just to tune in and get ready for the match. On the off days, you know, then we'll increase it a bit more and play maybe a couple of hours. But again, you've got to be wary of the fact that, you know, matches come quick and they're fast. Very rarely do you get more than one day off. And so rest is important as well. It's not just all about how many balls you can hit. And the players we have on the team, they're solid pros. They know what they need. They've been around. Their coaches will tell them on the phone. And so it's basically just getting ready and getting tuned up and getting ready for the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. It's a juggling act. How do you scout the players that you're going to play against, in considering that the format is so quick?
Well, it's not easy. Obviously, you have to wait and see who gets drafted in the teams or gets picked by the other teams, so you know who they are, and then you try and watch them whenever you can. And you know, a lot of the players have obviously played against these other players, and so to be quite frank, they know more about the players than I do. I mean, I see them through when I do commentary, but I don't commentate on a lot of matches. You know, sometimes with team tennis players, I don't see them, so you know, sometimes there'll be a player that will come along that I quite frankly don't know much about. I mean, I've done my research and watch them a little bit on YouTube and so, but I don't know their weaknesses and strengths. So you know, a lot of times we have to rely on the players and what they say, and then we have to kind of suss it out when the matches are on. And in general, you know, we do play the teams more than once as well. So you certainly learn from things as well, you know, as the matches go on.
Yeah, and I can imagine players are sharing a lot of information between each other as well.
Exactly. You know, people get so that you get, you know, she or he gets a bit nervous on this type of point, perhaps, or you know, on big points, serve to the forehand. You know, the player has a much better chance of missing that on that big point, and so on and so on. It's small little things really, but I'm always more concerned with you know, players thinking about what they take care of business on their side of the court. If my players play the way they can play, and they take care of business on their side of the court, then good luck to the other team is the way I look at it. Yeah,
that's a good way to think about it. My question to you is, what advantages do players have now that you didn't have when you were playing?
Well, everything. I mean, in terms of just preparation. I mean, you know, equipment. You know, I mean, you know, shoes in our day were terrible. We had no support. You know, low impact training. In our days, we didn't know what that was. You know, we would, you know, do replacements, you know, down the road. You know, that sort of stuff. Stretching. The only stretching I did was getting out of bed in the morning. You know, we didn't know that was a vital thing either. You know, diet. You know, diet. My meal of choice before a match, a couple of hours before a match, I'd have a steak well done with French fries and wash it down with a couple of Cokes. You know, so, you know, all that sort of stuff now has changed. Now, obviously, everything is organised for the players. You know, they have coaches all the time. We didn't really have many coaches travel until money started coming into the game. At the first part of the career, we had coaches at home, but we couldn't afford to travel with them because we couldn't pay them anything. And so now they have, you know, they have analysis of matches. They have stretching rooms before matches. You know, they get their laundry done. They have hotels paid for. Everything is restrings. Everything is sort of done so that when you go out on court, you're 100%. And in our day, there was a lot more done for you, you know.
Just lost you there for a second. Sorry, John.
Okay.
Let's get to a question here that just came up. What's John's favourite Byung Bong story?
Oh my gosh, I got thousands of those. Well, I'll tell you a story. Just a quick one about, you know, a lot of people when they talk about great athletes in the game. In my opinion, Byung Bong was the greatest athlete that's ever played. I don't say the greatest tennis player, although he was one heck of one, but as an athlete, I believe that he would have taken on any player that you can imagine in any sprints, long distance running, any endurance tests, and would have beaten them all, anybody that you can mention. And he was a very modest chap, and he still is. And getting him to sort of talk about himself is very difficult. But one time I managed to pry some stuff out of him when we were playing on the senior tour, and I asked him about his fitness methods. And I said to him, Bjorn, I don't really ever see you ever doing any like distance running or gym work and stuff. And he said, no. He said, I've always done my work on the court, but I was, blessed with, sort of a resting pulse rate of 40. And to be quite frank, he said, I never get tired. And I said to him, did you ever get tired in a match? And he said, one time I played Lendl, and I think it was in the 5th set, and as I walked to hit to get ready for the next shot, I thought, geez, I'm feeling a little bit tired, but then it went away. And he said, that's the only time. And he said a year ago, this is when he was in his mid-40s and was playing on the senior tour. He said the Swedish Institute of Health, or whatever they call it, asked him if he would mind doing an experiment. And he said, sure, what do I need to do? Because they realized, they'd heard that he was this, they knew that he was this bionic man, basically, which is what he was. Yep. And he said, what do you want us to do? What do you want me to do? He said, well, bring your running shoes, and, we're going to put you on the treadmill. He said, well, I don't own a pair of running shoes. And they said, well, can you go and buy a pair? And he said, oh, okay. So he bought a pair of running shoes, and they got him on the treadmill and put all the oxygen thing on, and the heart monitors and all that stuff. And they said, can you start running? And he said, sure. And they came back in the room 2 hours, 45 minutes later and said, do you want to stop? He said, it's up to you. So he ran a marathon on the treadmill at like 45 years old when he didn't do any training. So he was, that was, he was just a bionic man. And he's still to this day has got the same waist size and the same weight as when he was 16 years old. Very annoying, actually, because he can eat whatever he wants, and he can certainly put away a few drinks. That's to put it mildly, and still got the same weight. So he's a freak of nature, and I mean that in a nice way,
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of freaks, somebody's asked here, John's opinion on Nick Kyrgios and Gael Monfils. Monfils is a freak.
Well, it's funny. I love watching and commentating on both of them. Funny enough, you picked two of my favourite players. You kind of have mixed feelings when you look at them both. And now, obviously, Monfils is certainly not like past it, but he's getting to the latter stage of his career, whereas Nick certainly isn't. And you look at them and you think that if they put their mind to it, if they realised on the court that hitting a shot between the legs when you don't need to for a winner and the crowd going crazy is only worth 1 point. Yep. If they could ever get through their head that just hitting a regular backhand cross court and winning the point is worth the same as a spectacular shot, I think both of these players, I mean, Nick is still young enough could have won Grand Slams. But unfortunately, I don't think they ever will. Certainly Monfils, I don't think ever will. And Nick, unless he changes, I don't think he ever will. And in some ways, I'm pleased about that, because I love to watch him, because you never know what he's going to do. For sure. And if he suddenly sort of, toned that down and played percentage tennis, maybe he wouldn't be such a joy to watch. But if he did that, if he just pulled it down a little bit, 10%, 15% maybe, we could be talking about a Grand Slam winner. But I don't think, unfortunately, he's ever going to do that. So he'll be a player that we'll remember, I think, for hitting spectacular and great shots. But he'll be, in terms of slams, he won't have won any trophies.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think his unpredictability is sort of a gift and a curse at the same time.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can look back in sort of my day, who was slightly older than me, but someone like an Ilan Stasi, who was a genius, but he did win a couple of slams. Yeah. But if he'd have, again, mentally been sort of stronger at times and worked, and not gone so nutty, he would have probably won another 6 or 7 Grand Slams. But he still won 2 Grand Slams. Yep. You can't say it wasn't a success. It's all relative. But unfortunately, I don't think Nick ever will win one unless he tones it down, which will be sad. Yep. Because he's, potentially he could be a great player, but, you can't go out there and do the stuff he does and win 7 matches in a Grand Slam. I just don't think he's capable at the moment. Yeah,
over a 2-week period, that is tough. What is your personal best Wimbledon moment?
Well, probably winning the mixed doubles for the first time, you know, with Wendy Turnbull, my Aussie friend, the Rabbit. I mean, I had a few big singles matches which were great, but in terms of, I think that was the one because I mean, it sounds a bit corny, and I suppose it is, but I do remember for the mixed doubles they present the award up in the Royal Box, and we got the trophy, and I remember looking down at the players' box, and my parents were there, and they had you know, throughout their life sacrificed their holiday money because we weren't by any means a wealthy family to pay for my brother David, myself, and my younger brother Tony to play tournaments. So basically, they didn't have a holiday until, you know, we could start paying for them for one. And so, you know, you kind of look down at them both, and you thought, okay, maybe they're thinking that the sacrifice was worthwhile. You know, so I think that was probably my best moment.
I think that's Marcus Willis on here at the moment. He's written interesting fact. Last unforced error John hit from the baseline was 1994.
Is that what he said? Well, he's been very kind, but yeah, Marcus is he was on our team. He's great, fabulous player. Now he's concentrating on doubles, and my prediction is that if Marcus keeps working, he'll be a top 20 doubles player in the next year and a half. How about that one?
I like that. I actually saw him play some touch tennis as well, and it looks like a lot of fun. But he's a beast on the touch tennis court, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's a beast on the court when he wants to be. He's very talented and great guy, and we loved him on the team. He was fabulous. Yeah,
definitely. So you went into a little bit of like what you ate before big matches. How did you prepare from a practice sense when you were playing?
Well, you know, times have changed. You know, as I say, we didn't have coaches until the latter parts of my career, and you know, just you know, I'm going to sort of play myself up here, which just because why not? Why the heck not? But when here's an example of practicing. When I got the final of the Australian Open when I lost to Vidas Gerulaitis. Admittedly, the Australian Open wasn't the same as it is now. It was a lot of the top players didn't play it, which I was happy about because I managed to get to the final. But we happened to be practice partners, you know, during the week, Vidas and I. I certainly wasn't expecting to get to the final. He probably was because he was seeded number 3, but I certainly wasn't. But we practiced every day, and we actually went out most nights as well, truth be told. But times have changed. But we practiced every day, and we would play for an hour, 2 hours, and one day, which was, you know, that shows how the champions are the champions. It was a rainy day in Kooyong in Melbourne. Yep. And rain most of the day. Of course, they had no indoor courts in those days. And Vidas said to me, look, you know, get your racket. And I've grabbed a bunch of old balls. We're going to go and hit. And it was pouring down. And I said, well, are you off your head? Where are we going to hit? He said, well, we'll find somewhere. Just trust me. So we got into a cab and we started driving around Kooyong, and we found a park where there were grass courts, but they were padlocked because it was raining. It had been raining and they were wet. And Vidas said, that will do. And I said, what do you mean that will do? It's padlocked. And he said, well, we'll climb over the fence. So he climbed over the fence. It took me about half an hour, and I eventually got over there. And the court was wet, but we got the balls out. We played with one of our old rackets. We only had 3 or 4. And we sort of volleyed and hit a few balls, and we played for about an hour. And he said to me afterwards, he said, you do realise that psychologically, you know, we've just got one over everybody else in the draw because we're the only 2 people that have played in the whole of Melbourne during the tournament. And that's what we before the final. I said to him, you know, it's my first Grand Slam final. It's your first, you know, do you want to hit or do you want to find someone else? And he looked at me and said in rather colourful language, do you think that you're going to learn something new from my game? Of course we're going to play. So we practiced an hour and a half before the finals.
God, that's an awesome story.
Times have changed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
Who is your favourite player to commentate on?
That's well, as I say, I like the entertainers. You know, now I like the people that do something different. So yep. I mean, I love commentating on Roger Federer, and there were times when this was 6, 7, 8 years ago when Federer was dominating, you know, everything other than clay with Nadal, and a lot of matches I would do. You know, people would say, well, you know, that was you did Federer. That was pretty boring. He won pretty easy at Wimbledon. You know, 3-2 and 3 or something. And I said, well, there's 2 things. The reason why I disagree with you. Number one, it's a short match, and I like short matches, so I can have lunch. Otherwise, you know, I'd rather that than sit out there for 6 hours commentating. I don't want to hear my own voice for 5 hours. So that was a bonus. But number two, when you watch Federer play, and you still do to this day, he's always going to come up with 4 or 5, maybe more shots that no one else could play.
Yeah.
That shots that defy imagination, that are shots that are genius. And in my day, McEnroe was that kind of player that would do things that just I wouldn't even have the imagination to do, let alone carry it out. And that's what Federer does. So for me, Federer is still my favorite to commentate on, because you know, he's a master of doing things and that are just mind-boggling. And this is in the men's game. In the women's game, you know, the women's game, you know, I like, again, women that play with flair, you know, and I love the new current group of top women players that are coming through now. I think we've got a special group now with Corey Goff and you know, there's just some really special talents out there. But in the men's game, for me, Federer is the one I love commentating.
Yeah, me too. He's my favorite to watch. Johnny O'Mara just jumped on, the Prince of San Diego.
Prince of San Diego. Yeah, what was the golf game while he's indoors? That's all he can do.
That's true. Well, he said, what was the first meeting between Agassi and Andy Murray like?
Oh, no. Johnny's trying to get me to tell a very naughty story, and I can't do that. I can't do that on it. But it was an interesting story, an interesting time when they met in Las Vegas during a match where I was Davis Cup captain at the time, and I was scouting out some players, and I was actually scouting out Alex Bogdanovich, who was playing Sam Querrey in a match. Yep. And I happened to be watching it with Andy and Jamie Murray and Brad Gilbert, who was coaching at the time. And then Agassi came along because he was obviously being coached by Brad, and Brad wanted to introduce him to Andy. And I can't get too graphic here, but anyway, it's a story about Agassi with Andy about body hair, put it that way. And it was very amusing, and yeah, I can't go any further than that, otherwise I'll get kicked off the air. I'll get sensitive.
Johnny knew that. He was setting you up.
I know he was. Of course he was.
I couldn't have told that one. What is your best Davis Cup performance as a player?
Well, that would have been in the semi-finals when we beat Australia in Crystal Palace in London. And I played the first match and beat John Alexander, who was, you know, a top 10 player. And I remember it was the second match. We were up 1-0. Buster Mottram had played a great match and beaten Tony Roach. And, you know, there was a lot of pressure on, obviously. And I remember going out there, you know, packed house and live on TV, biggest match we'd had in Britain for a long time. And I lost the first 10 points. I was down 2-love, love 30 on my serve, hadn't won a point. And I just remember looking over at my father, who's, you know, my parents, and I was thinking, you know, I mean, this was because tennis is, you know, when you're, you know, you pro, you get some amazing highs, but you also get some amazing lows. And it can be a very, very lonely place on a court when things are not going well, because you're on there on your own. Doubles is different. You've got someone else you can blame, but you can't in singles, you only blame yourself. And I remember thinking, okay, sort of now or never. And then just by, I don't know, luck or whatever, or focusing, I suppose, I just suddenly started hitting the ball like the ball was like a football, and I couldn't miss. And I won, I don't know, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3 or something, and killed him, and played probably the best match under that kind of pressure. Yeah. I wish I'd have bottled it and known why I did it. I don't have any idea, but it just happened to click for some reason, and thank goodness it did. But that was my best match.
Yeah, it's interesting how Davis Cup's changed. Are you a fan of the changes, or do you wish it was as it was?
No, well, I mean, to be honest, Davis Cup, it's for me, one of the saddest things. But I was saying this on TV 10 years ago, that Davis Cup was basically dead or was dying. And, you know, you had the idiots that were in charge of the ITF that were saying that, you know, Davis Cup's got no problem. You've got 8,000 people watching this match and 10,000 watching this. But the bottom line was, 10 years ago, you were getting an average of 3 out of the top 10 playing. And the public there's only going to be for so long that the public are going to be fooled by it. And it's the same. I always liken it to the FA Cup in soccer or football in England, which was the biggest, you know, event in Britain for many, many years. And then one time, Sir Alex Ferguson put in a reserve team for an FA Cup match for Manchester United. And then after that, all the other top teams thought, well, hold on a minute, he's doing that to rest his players, and so we should do that. And the FA Cup basically was almost dead. It's got a bit better now, but for a while there, even now, a lot of top players don't play their best players. And it's in Davis Cup, you can't have a competition where the top players are not playing. And that was what was happening. So they had to change it, but I just think they made a mistake. I was a big believer in they should have made it every 4 years. It wouldn't have been easy, but they should have made it more like an Olympic kind of thing, and somehow done it that way. But the format of what it is now, I mean, to me, it's just lost its magic. Yeah. I don't think we're ever going to get it back again, unfortunately.
You think the prestige is gone?
I do, yeah, I do. I don't think I think there are too many other events now. I'm not so sure, again, and this is being old-fashioned, all that, and it's just the way it is, maybe because there was no money in it those days, hardly. But as a tennis player in my day, I believe that it was Grand Slams and then Davis Cup, period. Yep. I think if you ask the players now, Davis Cup would not be second, and not even be third, and probably be, in a lot of cases, behind the Masters Series events. It's just the way it is. I'm not blaming them. Yep. It's just a fact. And until, I always thought someone like a Leighton Hewitt, for me, he was the one that was what I would call a Davis Cup player. That as soon as the Davis Cup the schedule came out, he marked it down in his calendar. It didn't make any difference whether Australia were in the world group or the group below, which they were occasionally. He still played. That was automatic for him, because I always thought, when is it not a privilege to play for your country? That's what I could never understand. Whether even if your team was in the third division in Davis Cup or whatever they call it, you're still playing for your country. Yeah. And I never got that it wasn't a privilege to play for your country. But I'm not so sure it makes it's such a big deal for a lot of players. Some players, it's just, don't get me wrong, but I think for a lot, it's other things have just taken over.
Yeah, now they're competing with Laver Cup and ATP Cup as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good events. I mean, the Laver Cup is magnificent. I mean, the ATP Cup, I thought, was a tremendous success this year. They were fantastic matches, and there's only so many you go around. The players can't. They're not machines. I mean, there's only so many weeks, and there's only so many times you can put yourself through that kind of demanding. Tennis is a sport that, unlike almost all the others, there's really no off season. I mean, I know there is a little bit at the end, but it's not really, because you're talking 6 weeks, and then you rest for 2 weeks max, and then you need at least 2 to 3 weeks to get back in shape. It's not like a football or basketball, or where they have a 6 month season. And then I'm not saying players get out of shape, but you've got rest time. Tennis, you don't. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. It's tough. I mean, they're always traveling, changing time zones. It's grind. Yeah. What's the most amazing thing you've ever seen on the tennis court?
Most amazing thing. Well, I mean, there's been a few of them. I mean, I guess you would a stripper while I was commentating at Wimbledon in the final.
That's right.
That was right up there. Unfortunately, it was a bloke. That would be right up there. I think, a couple of Davis Cup matches that, in the old days when the atmosphere was, I remember, and again, I can only talk about my own experience, but we played against Spain in Barcelona, and the Spanish had, they got a lot of soccer, supporters to come to this match, because they were worried there wasn't going to be a big crowd. And so 3/4 of the crowd were these like soccer supporters, and they weren't what you would call tennis. And they were going nuts, but not in a good way. And in the last match, Roger Taylor was playing Manolo Orantes, which on paper, Roger shouldn't have won. And he ended up not winning, but he had match point. But there was a particular side of the crowd that were baiting him, and really, I mean, bad, stuff. And I wasn't playing in the match, and it got to the stage, and Roger had match point and lost. And at the end of the match, we'd started to walk back, but Roger was still out there, and there was like a sort of a tunnel, and I was sort of peering over the tunnel, watching this crowd that was screaming, going nuts. And Roger, jumped into the crowd and went after someone in the crowd. And Roger was a big guy, and I'm thinking, well, good luck on him. But I'm about to run down the tunnel and hide because there wasn't much security out there like there is now, you know.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Roger came bolting back, and I was standing next to another player, John Fever, a Davis Cup friend of mine, and some guy came running down there, and John was looking the other way, and the guy laid a punch, and he was actually aiming at me, but I ducked and saw it coming, but I unfortunately didn't warn John because I had to think of myself first, and he got smacked on the chin, and then we were hidden inside the locker rooms for about an hour while the police tried to disperse the crowd. So Davis Cup got a bit interesting in those days. Now it doesn't happen like that, but in those days there wasn't much security, as I say.
It's fiery.
Fiery. Yeah.
Are you a fan of on-court coaching in the pros?
I'm not. No, I'm not. But I'm always a believer in if it helps the sport, if the public demand it, then I would be for it, because I think whatever we can do to keep tennis one spot ahead of the next sport below us, because there are a lot of sports looking for the entertainment dollars or pounds or whatever. We've got to do it. And I was a big fan of Hawkeye and a big fan of the they call it the shot clock. I think that was great. And if it was proved that fans liked it, then I would say okay. But for me, it takes away a lot of the great stuff about tennis. I like the fact that when you're on the court, like an Andy Murray goes out on the court, and he's with his coach, but they've gone over the game plan, but they have 6 game plans, 5 or 6. They have A, B, C, D, and E, F, and they're ready. And if something goes wrong, they go to the next one. But he has to implement it himself. I mean,
Yes.
If he's down a break in the 5th, he has to find a way to. I don't want a coach coming on and telling him. I mean, I think coaches. There's enough interaction with coaches right before the match than needs to be on the court. And in the women's game, where they do allow it, other than the Grand Slam, it's become so prevalent now that if you look at the women players, they look at the coach every single point. And it's almost like they're not looking after themselves. They're looking for reinsurance every point they look in the crowd. To me, it becomes a weakness. And I think that's part of the greatness of the sport, is that you have to figure it out yourself if things go wrong. That's what I like about it. But again, if it was proved that the public, and anyway, by the way, half the time when they mic the coaches up, half the time the coaches don't speak the same language as the people who are watching them on TV anyway.
Sure.
So what's the point of watching them and they're babbling in a foreign language that no one understands? What's the good of that? You're not getting anything out of it anyway. The only interaction is if you know what the coach is saying and you see the reaction of the player, and then it can be a bit juicy and fun, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I'd rather it stay the normal way. That I'm a traditionalist in that way.
Yeah.
But then I would change if the public demanded it.
Yeah, that's a good opinion, considering that World Team Tennis, you're allowed to coach on the side as well.
You are, yeah, and I'm probably talking myself out of a job here, but it's a slightly different thing because it's a team format.
Yep.
But I think in an individual sport, when you're on the road, I just think it's better this way. I think it just makes it it's more of a kind of a gladiatorial kind of sport, an event.
Yep, a bit more problem solving with it. Somebody sent me an email to ask you this question, but they were asking for your memories from a World Team Tennis clinic in the 1990s with the Williams sisters.
Well, I don't remember that.
When they were young, apparently.
Well, I used to, Richard, I used to live in Los Angeles. I don't now live in Florida, but I used to live in, and Richard would call me sometimes and ask me to go and hit with the young ladies. But I also used to have a joke with Richard, and I would say to him, look, Richard, if you come over to kind of my side of town, but I was a bit nervous about going over to his side of town because he told me there were gangs around. And it was a bit shaky. So, but I was kind of only joking. I said I would, but we never got round to it. But I always had a good relationship with Richard, and we always used to have a laugh. And I think that the Williams sisters, are, and I've said this on TV many times, are the greatest sports story in history. And of what they've achieved, it's beyond belief that like Richard would predict they would be number one and both number one in the world without. And him not having any tennis experience other than learning from a video and a book, and created these two, helped these two amazing stars that have dominated the women's game for so many years. But I don't remember that clinic, but I'm sure there was around. But to be honest, I don't remember 90% of the matches I played myself anyway. I wasn't very good at that kind of stuff. I don't remember it for some reason.
Yeah, those girls are phenomenal athletes. How do you think we as tennis, and as a tennis industry, how do you think we can attract more raw athletes like the Williams sisters and to tennis instead of losing them to other sports like, basketball, soccer, football?
Well, I do believe that, it comes from obviously parents, obviously wanting their kids to play and encouraging them. And I think one of the things that we don't perhaps, say enough about tennis is that it is a game for life. It's a sport for life. And there's not many of them around. Yeah, golf is, but let's face it, unless you walk the course, there's not that much exercise in golf. Whereas tennis, I mean, you can play. My father was coaching till he was 88. You can play till you're in your 90s. Yes. And it's a game for life. And I think if parents would, teach that to their kids, that a lot of these sports that they play, American football, basketball, you're not going to be doing that past a certain age. It's just not going to have pickup games after a certain age. Tennis is a great social sport, and it's a game that, as I say, you can play forever. So I don't think we promote that enough. For me, I think it's the greatest sport there is, and I think we've got to be able to shout it a lot more than we do. Yes.
Do you think the shorter forms of tennis are going to get younger kids outside of the reach of tennis parents excited about tennis?
Well, I mean, I get, for people go a bit bonkers about me, but I do believe that the shorter format in professional tennis is the way to go. I even think in Grand Slams, every time I say that, then I get rubbish by it's not the same and all that. But I think you have to go where people are going these days, and much as it's sort of, you see these 5-hour matches and you talk about the great physical feats and all that stuff. Who really these days, particularly younger people, have the patience to watch 5 hours of a sport? They just don't do it. And I think if through playing tennis and watching it, that's where you get inspired, and we've got to get viewers to watch the game. And I think shorter format is just a lot more appealing. And again, going back to team tennis, that's one of the great things about it. You go for an evening in team tennis, it's 2.5 hours, beginning to end. 2 hours. Kids love it. The families love it because they know what time they're going to get there, and they know what time they're going to end. And when you go to a Grand Slam and you watch a match, I mean, you can go on forever, 5-6 hours. Go on for 2 days sometimes. I mean, to me, at least now the Grand Slams finally, other than the French, have got tiebreakers in the fifth. Yeah. But Wimbledon copped out. They finally succumbed to the fifth set tiebreaker. But instead of making it 6-all with any common sense, they make it 12-all. So what they've done is they've made best of 6 sets instead of best of 5. What they've done, I mean, it's ridiculous. People don't have, they just don't want to watch sport for that amount of time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a long slog, and if you play a match that goes that long, you go on the next match.
Well, you are the draw, and sometimes you get bad weather. You get one side of the draw has to wait a day, and all this stuff. The opponent is waiting. You're gone. You can't recover. It's too physical. Too physical.
Definitely. What's one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you were playing?
Oh, well, I mean, for me personally, myself, just to work harder. I mean, I was fortunate that I had a certain amount of talent, so I got by. But there were only really a couple of occasions, particularly my main one was at the end of my career when I hooked up with an fabulous Australian coach called Bob Brett, who you may have heard of.
I know Bob.
Who after he got through.
But yeah, you just came back on.
Yeah, who got through the pain of coaching me for about 4 years. He then went on to better things and coached Boris Becker. She's got. Have you got me now?
Yep, you're back. Oh, you're coming in and out. So, yes, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what was I saying? So he got so
With
after
Bob
he
Brett.
coached, yeah, Bob Brett. So he basically taught me at you know, at the last stage of my career in 28, and said, look, you know, you've been talented, you've been pretty high at some stage, but your work ethic is terrible. I don't want your money unless you're going to give 100%, 110%, and I did, and got my ranking back from 400 to 21.
Yeah.
And I look back at it and regret that I didn't put that effort in throughout my career when I was young, because, you know, who knows where I could have gone. But that was a weakness. And so whenever I work with players, I don't do it much now other than team tennis. I don't coach sort of young players. But when I did, I always told them that the most important thing is you've got to work hard. You don't have to be a monk or a nun. You can still have fun, but it's a short career at tennis. I mean, it's getting longer now, but the bottom line is, you know, you'll wake up, you know, you're 21 years old and you'll wake up and you'll be 30. It'll go in a heartbeat. And if you haven't given yourself 100% at it, you'll always regret that. And I regret that. And it's something that, so whenever I've tried to work with players, I've tried to instill, just give it, if you give 100%, whatever your ranking is, you come out of it proud. If you haven't given 100%, there'll always be regrets, and that's my regret for my career, that I didn't give 100%. I did towards the end, but wasted a lot of years. Had a lot of fun, but could have had better results on the court.
That's really good advice for anybody who's listening. Even during this time, we're all sort of in lockdown. We can only do what we can, but just make the most of it.
Well, I mean, it's the old saying, and you know, Bob used to say to me, and he's right, that every time that you goof off on the court, you know, there's 1,000, 2,000, many thousands of people that are playing the extra 2 hours that you're not playing. You know, and so when you're a junior, it's the same thing. If you try and, you know, take the easy way out, there's thousands of other people that are not doing that, and they're gaining on you every day.
Yeah,
so yeah, every time you mess around, the other person's taking it seriously. So that's the way you got to look at it.
Great. And mate, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciated it, and I think everyone who watches this will get a lot out of it. So
great.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Now,
and when I come to the Aviators game, you got to tell me the rest of that Agassi Murray story.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you that for sure.
All right, John. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.